Chapter 877. In the depths of the void, Poison Fire King and Blood Hand King's soul power penetrated through the spatial barrier and landed on Yi Chen's body. Peak of the third layer. Wasn't it said that there was only the third layer? Poison Fire King faintly exclaimed. Although the third layer and peak third layer were in the same realm, the difference was not small. At the peak of the third layer, the energy within one's body and flesh would fuse together, allowing one to store much more energy. Moreover, the perfection of one's mental state would allow one's body to utilize energy with greater ease, increasing one's battle strength. Poison Fire King, are you afraid? Blood Hand King sneered. Poison Fire King almost jumped up as if his tail had been stepped on. Blood Hand King, what do you mean? No matter how powerful he is still not a life and death king. I'm merely surprised. Moreover, I advise you not to be careless. He has a supreme great sword, and even Giant Wolf King is no match for him. Although both of us are stronger than Giant Wolf King, we might be injured if we're not careful. Poison Fire King had always been cautious, and he viewed his own life with extreme importance. If not for the temptation being too great, he wouldn't have rashly come over. Rest assured, I won't be careless no matter who I'm facing. Otherwise, Sky King wouldn't have invited me. Before becoming a life and death king, Blood Hand King was an assassin. As an assassin, the most basic requirement was not to be careless. Even when facing an ordinary person, one's heart had to be as calm as still water. Poison Fire King's mouth twitched. He also knew that Blood Hand King was a frightening person. His frightening was not his strength, but his calm heart. Such a person would either not attack, or strike like a thunderbolt. Alright, let's do it. Make sure to use your killing moves. Poison Fire King licked his lips with a sinister expression on his face. Blood Hand King's eyes were as calm as an ancient well, but his indifference was even more frightening. Circulating their Zhen Yuan, the two's auras rose. Attack! Gotcha! The space ruptured, and Poison Hand King and Blood Hand King appeared. Their auras had already reached a critical point. Poison Hand King slightly opened his mouth, faintly emitting a purple-red radiance. Blood Hand King's palms turned blood-red like jade, containing a frightening power. Bewitching mirror shattering. They were fast, but Yi Chen was faster. Just as the two moved, before they could break the space, Yi Chen took out the Sky Scorpio sword and unsheathed it in an instant. By the time the two broke the space, Yi Chen's bewitching mirror shattering had already finished storing up power. With a slash, boundless space ripples and sword chi containing the profound of space pervaded, condensed, and solidified. Poison Fire King and Blood Hand King, who were sealed in the mirror, looked dazed. What was going on? How did Yi Chen know that someone was going to attack him? How did he know that they would attack from this position? Coincidence? Even a fool would know that this was not a coincidence. The only explanation was that Yi Chen had a soul power comparable to a life and death king. By relying on his powerful soul power, he was able to trace their existence and make preparations in advance. Otherwise, there was no way to explain the fact that they were attacked as soon as they came out. Damn it! In less than 1,000th of a blink of an eye, Poison Fire King and Blood Hand King's figures twisted, struggling to break free from the restraint of the frozen space. However, they had underestimated the might of bewitching mirror shattering. Adding on the fact that they were caught unprepared, they wasted a lot of time. By the time they reacted, the mirror had already shattered. It shattered into millions of pieces, each piece like a sharp blade. Poochie 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 poochie. What did it feel like to be cut into pieces? This was the feeling right now. Poison Fire King and Blood Hand King's protective Zhen Yuan was cut open, and cracks appeared on their armors. The places where they weren't wearing defensive artifacts were covered in bloody scars. The masks on their faces were also torn off, revealing their flesh and blood. In a mere instant, the two had suffered a frightening blow. Kid, I'll dismember you into 1,000 pieces. Poison Fire King's roar couldn't even be isolated by the pervading space power. The entire mountain range shook, as if this sound wave had the power to destroy a small mountain range. Still not enough. Using bewitching mirror shattering to injure Poison Fire King and Blood Hand King, not only did the two have to retract their killing moves, but their bodies had also become stiff. However, Yi Chen knew that this was far from enough. The opponents had undying bodies, and these injuries would quickly recover. By the time they recovered, he would be in danger fighting 1 against 2. His forehead opened, and a silver vertical eye opened. Noiselessly, a silver light beam shot out, ignoring the pervading space power and Poison Fire King's physical defenses, directly drilling into his sea of soul. Amidst Poison Fire King's muffled groan, Yi Chen didn't stop. Holding the Sky Scorpio sword, his figure flickered, arriving not far from Bloodhand King and thrusting out. Autumn Water Sword Art's second style, Congealing Water. In terms of pure lethality, Congealing Water had already surpassed Bewitching Mirror Shattering. This was because, apart from containing the metal Profound and water Profound, it also contained the Death Dao. As the sword stabbed out, the crisis of death enveloped Bloodhand King. Bloodhand King was, after all, an assassin. Be it his mental endurance or reaction speed, he was a bit faster than Poison Fire King. At the moment of imminent peril, he crossed his arms in front of his forehead. Rip! The Sky Scorpio sword pierced through Bloodhand King's crossed arms, only missing an inch. A rain of light sprinkled down, and Bloodhand King's arms turned into purple crystals, thoroughly shattering. Apart from this, a power of extermination spread through his arms and into his body. It's Death Dao. Bloodhand King didn't reveal a trace of pain on his face, as if the shattered arms weren't his. However, he was somewhat astonished by the Death Dao contained in Yi Chen's sword. This was far more profound than the Death Dao he had comprehended when he first entered Life and Death Realm. If Yi Chen comprehended half of the Death Dao and Life Dao, he would be able to enter Life and Death Realm and become a true king. However, Death Dao isn't enough to deal with it. An even more powerful Death Qi erupted from Bloodhand King's body, instantly dispersing Yi Chen's Death Qi. What a pity! The moment Bloodhand King crossed his arms and blocked the sword, Yi Chen knew that he had lost the best opportunity to kill him. As a Life and Death King, it was impossible for him to not have comprehended Death Dao. If this sword had pierced Bloodhand King's vitals, Yi Chen was confident that the combination of Death Dao and Congealing Water would have left Bloodhand King on the verge of death. Seeing that his sword strike had no effect, Yi Chen hastily retreated and released his powerful sword domain, suppressing the surrounding spatial power and making the might of the sword domain even more frightening. Go! Thousands of cyan-colored swords condensed and shot toward Poison Fire King and Bloodhand King. It was as if 10,000 arrows had been shot at the same time. The intensity was indescribable. Bloodhand King's shattered arms rapidly grew back, and the wounds on his body also healed. Bloodhand King's emotionless eyes fixated on Yi Chen, a trace of apprehension in the depths of his pupils. As an assassin, what he feared the most were those whose minds were as calm as an ancient well, able to display their strength to the limit, or even surpass it. Without a doubt, Yi Chen was this kind of person. From the moment they were restrained, the opponent's attacks came one after another, each of them extremely dangerous. As long as they were the slightest bit careless, the consequences would be unimaginable. It was hard to imagine how Yi Chen could come up with such a meticulous plan in such a short time. Clang, clang, clang. The protective Jin Yuan of a Life and Death King was extremely sturdy. The thousands of swords were all bounced off, and each spark could melt a large amount of mountain rocks. I made a mistake. I should have targeted someone else. Bloodhand King's mental fortitude and reaction speed astonished Yi Chen. On the other hand, the other person was much worse in this aspect, only at the level of an ordinary Life and Death King. Of course, this couldn't be blamed on Yi Chen. Yi Chen hadn't studied these two's characters. If he had, he wouldn't have chosen this person as his first target. A silver light shot out as Yi Chen unleashed a soul light at Bloodhand King. Under the suppression of sword domain, no matter how fast Bloodhand King's reaction speed was, his body couldn't keep up. Therefore, the soul light charged into his sea of soul. His face slightly pale, Bloodhand King's expression was somewhat absent-minded. The soul membrane of a Life and Death King was extremely powerful, but Yi Chen's innate ability, soul light, was also not to be underestimated. Under the impact of the soul light, the membrane trembled, and his soul felt dizzy. Kill. Since Blood Hand King was his first target, Yi Chen wouldn't change his mind. Moreover, it would be difficult for him to use Soul Light a third time. If not for his Immortal Sword Soul reaching the 5th step and resonating with the 5th step Destruction Sword Soul, his soul power would have been completely depleted, and his condition would have dropped to a frightening level. And now, the soul power in his Sea of Soul was less than 1/10 of what it used to be, and it was at a dangerous level. Like a sword light, Yi Chen shot straight at Blood Hand King. The existence of Sword Domain made his speed even faster and harder to capture. In an instant, the distance between him and Blood Hand King was less than 10 meters. A sword pierced out. Congealing water. Kid, die for me. Poison Fire King had already recovered from the dizziness. While using his protective Zhen Yuan to resist the myriad swords, he slightly opened his mouth, and a purple-red light flickered before shooting out. Fused profound martial skill, Poison Fire Explosion. I have to kill him. Yi Chen's face was filled with killing intent as he completely disregarded Poison Fire King's frightening attack. His sword pierced Blood Hand King's forehead, and a burst of energy combined with Death Chi exploded in Blood Hand King's head. Blood Hand King's head exploded, his life force gone. In the next moment, Poison Fire King's attack also landed on Yi Chen's body, creating a violent explosion. The purple-red flame was not only scorching hot, but also contained intense fire poison. Chapter 878. The location of the battle was thousands of miles away from the main peak of Zhangtian Martial School, but everyone in the school could feel waves of horrifying power being transmitted through the air. The howling wind had even blown down the trees on the surrounding mountains, uprooting the flowers and grasses, and then turning them into dust. This is a battle between kings. Li Zhangfeng's pupils shrank as he muttered. Sect leader, is Elder Yi cultivating in the core of the mountain range? Gao Ziyuan's face was filled with worry. What can we do? The great elders smiled bitterly. A casual attack from a life and death king can annihilate the entire sect. We can only pray that Elder Yi can turn misfortune into fortune and repel the invading kings. The news of Yi Chen heavily injuring Giant Wolf King had long since reached Eternal Sky Sect. Everyone in Eternal Sky Sect was filled with reverence for Yi Chen, regarding him as an existence comparable to ordinary kings. Bang! All of a sudden, the earth shook, and a lot of buildings on the main peak of the school collapsed. In the next moment, a huge purple-red fireball rose 1,000 li away. Even from 1,000 li away, it seemed as if it was right in front of one's eyes. Swish! As the fireball rose, a beam of light tore through the sky and pierced through the main peak's main hall, leaving a pitch-black hole in the ground. What's this? Everybody was startled. It looks like a sword? Li Zhangfeng's heart skipped a beat. Making a prompt decision, he slammed his palm on the ground. The beam of light flew out, revealing a sword sheath. It's Elder Ye's sword sheath. Someone recognized it. The evil vanquishing sword at Yi Chen's waist was something everyone had seen many times. Holding the sword sheath, Li Zhangfeng's expression became even more worried. This battle was definitely better than the one with Giant Wolf King. Otherwise, the sword sheath wouldn't have flown out. As the fireball rose, Poison Fire King was incomparably happy. The Poison Fire Explosion was one of his most powerful ace attacks. Not to mention a little guy at the peak of the 3rd layer of Life and Death Challenge, even Life and Death Realm warriors at the same level would not dare to use their bodies to resist it. He was sure that Yi Chen would die without a complete corpse. What a pity for Blood Hand King. Poison Fire King could not understand why Yi Chen would risk his life to kill Blood Hand King. The fireball gradually shrank, its color changing from purplish red to dark red, then from dark red to orange red. Then, with a poof, it dissipated into nothingness, as if it had never existed. Only the huge crater and lava on the ground could prove the authenticity of what had just happened. Impossible! Poison Fire King's expression changed. He saw Yi Chen. Yi Chen was wielding 2 swords. In the air, Yi Chen's appearance could only be described as miserable. His 2 swords were crisscrossed between his head and chest. Apart from his head and torso, the rest of his body was scorched black. His legs were even missing. From the outside, the two arms holding the evil vanquishing sword and Sky Scorpio sword looked no different from charcoal. Indistinctly, crackling sounds could be heard coming from within his arms. The instant he killed Blood Hand King, Yichen immediately switched from offense to defense. The Destruction Sword intent was replaced by the Immortal Sword intent. Immortal Sword intent focused on suppression and defense. Even so, he could only protect the most important parts of his body. His legs were directly burnt to ashes, and even the evil vanquishing sword's sheath was sent flying to God knows where. All of a sudden, Yi Chen's arms turned into two balls of fire, burning into nothingness. Losing control of the two swords, the evil vanquishing sword and Sky Scorpio sword fell down, along with the storage ring. It's mine. Poison Fire King's attention shifted to the Sky Scorpio sword. His figure flickered, ready to pounce. Sword Snake Art. The evil vanquishing sword and Sky Scorpio sword faintly trembled, each turning into 33 sword phantoms. A total of 66 sword phantoms formed, two sword phantoms flickering with cold light, twisting toward Poison Fire King. Poison Fire King managed to block the evil vanquishing sword, but not the Sky Scorpio sword. His arms and legs were shredded into bloody mist. Fortunately, at the crucial moment, he spat out a flame from his mouth, repelling the sword image aimed at his head. Sky Scorpio sword and evil vanquishing sword flew back, hovering above Yi Chen's head. Flesh and blood squirmed, bones sprouted, and Yi Chen's arms and legs grew back. Raising his right hand, the storage ring automatically appeared on his finger. With a flicker of light, Yi Chen changed into a new set of blue clothes. Limb rebirth? Poison Fire King couldn't control his shock and blurted out. Damn In Sky King. You didn't even find out such important information. Poison Fire King hated In Sky King to the bone. Yi Chen was indeed not a life and death king, but his soul power was comparable to a life and death king's. Moreover, he had comprehended Death Dao and even limb rebirth. If they continued fighting, he didn't know what new ability Yi Chen would use. However, thinking about it, Poison Fire King felt that he couldn't blame In Sky King. These abilities of Yi Chen were extremely powerful, and he wouldn't casually reveal them. Thus, In Sky King's failure to find out was quite normal. Activating Undying Body, Poison Fire King's 4 limbs grew back, and he also changed into a new set of clothes. Yi Chen, seems like we've all underestimated you. Poison Fire King looked at Yi Chen with apprehension. Who are you? Yi Chen asked. He had always been concealing his abilities. He wouldn't reveal all of his trump cards until the critical moment. Just like in the Secret Realm, he didn't reveal Bewitching Mirror Shattering. He knew that if he didn't pay attention to these details, it would be too late for regrets at the critical moment. Who I am is not important. What's important is that today, you'll die without a doubt. Poison Fire King didn't believe that he wasn't injured at all. Apart from pure killing power, his poison fire explosion also contained intense fire poison. This fire poison was like maggots in one's bones, extremely difficult to remove. Once it attacked the heart, even a peak life and death king would find it hard to save him. Is that so? As he spoke, Yi Chen took out a white fruit from his storage ring. This was the fruit of life and death's secret realm, containing a large amount of life chi. Just as Poison Fire King had expected, his body was indeed filled with fire poison that was difficult to remove. This fire poison was constantly devouring his life force and attacking his heart. Chewing the fruit of life, it turned into life liquid and entered his internal organs, replenishing his lost life force. Yi Chen let out a breath. For the time being, his life was no longer in danger. With your Zhen Yuan, using Undying Body should consume a lot of energy, right? Thinking of something, Poison Fire King grinned. Try it and you'll know. Activating his soul power, the Sky Scorpio sword and Evil Vanquishing sword landed in Yi Chen's hands. Fine, I'll give it a try. Poison Fire Explosion. Poison Fire King was extremely sinister. Opening his mouth, he spat out a killing move. A purplish-red flame pillar shot out, causing the space to boil and bubble. Extinguish. Yi Chen raised the Sky Scorpio sword and slashed. Buzz. The space distorted and solidified, sealing the purplish-red flame pillar and shattering it into thousands of pieces. Let's see how long you can last. Poison Fire King clearly wanted to exhaust Yi Chen's Zhenyuan. Opening his mouth, he spat out purplish-red flame pillar after purplish-red flame pillar, bombarding Yi Chen from several li away. He didn't dare to get too close to Yi Chen. Yi Chen's soul light left a lingering fear in his heart. Blood Hand King had also been struck by the soul light, causing his soul to feel dizzy. Otherwise, with Yi Chen's strength, how could he have instantly killed Blood Hand King? Yi Chen's soul light was simply not inferior to a heaven-grade high-step soul secret art at great completion. Yi Chen coldly snorted. Poison Fire King thought he didn't have much Zhenyuan left, but in fact he still had 60 to 70% of it. Recovering the undying body only used 30%. However, this didn't mean he could use it as he pleased. The fire poison didn't seem to be able to threaten Yi Chen at the moment, but it still held back half of his Zhenyuan. Otherwise, without the suppression of Zhenyuan, the fire poison would attack his heart, and he wouldn't even need Poison Fire King to kill him. Congealing water. Switching to the evil vanquishing sword, Yi Chen stabbed out with the Sky Scorpio sword in his right hand. A purple water-like sword energy pierced through the void and attacked Poison Fire King. Poison Fire King jumped in fright. Multitasking, perfect multitasking? Multitasking was something many people could accomplish, but to perfectly multitask like Yi Chen, executing different moves with both hands at the same time, was something few could accomplish. Even Poison Fire King admitted that he couldn't do it. Poison Fire Barrier. His left hand drew a semicircle, condensing an arc-shaped purple barrier in front of Poison Fire King. The water-like sword energy struck the purple barrier, causing circular ripples. With a muffled groan, Poison Fire King took several steps back. The poison fire flame explosion he was about to prepare was stopped. Now's the time. Yi Chen rapidly approached. With the bewitching mirror shattering in his left hand and congealing water in his right, it was as if he had turned into two people, fiercely attacking Poison Fire King. Ping 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 ping. Poison Fire King retreated again and again, blood trickling down the corner of his mouth. How much Zhenyuan does this kid have? Why hasn't the fire poison in his body erupted? Poison Fire King gradually thought of retreating. He had been underestimating Yi Chen all along. When Yi Chen didn't act as he expected, he lost confidence. Retreat. The space suddenly exploded as Poison Fire King tried to escape into the void. Bewitching mirror shattering. Condense for me. Steam rose from Yi Chen's body as he used the bewitching mirror shattering with the Sky Scorpio sword. A hilarious scene unfolded. The Poison Fire King was stuck in the spatial barrier. Half of his body was outside, while the other half was in the void. He looked miserable. Spatial shattering. Poison Fire King's exposed body shattered into thousands of pieces, filling the sky with a purple rain of light. Yi Chen, you're dead. I will take revenge. From the depths of the void, Poison Fire King's crazed roar resounded. Yi Chen didn't care about Poison Fire King's words. He spurted out a mouthful of purple-red blood. There wasn't a trace of vitality in it, only fire poison. In fact, he was already at the end of his rope at this point. Just now, he had drawn out a portion of the Zhenyuan he used to suppress the fire poison and used the bewitching mirror shattering. However, the fire poison had immediately counterattacked, forcing his Zhenyuan to retreat. If Poison Fire King had persisted for a while longer, the one to die would have been Yi Chen. Unfortunately, the opponent had been scared off. Chapter 879. This fire poison is indeed troublesome. Taking out a large amount of Zhenyuan crystals, Yi Chen focused on refining them as he closed his eyes. In the evening, the sun set below the mountain, and the sky darkened. Yi Chen opened his eyes and slowly let out a mouthful of fire poison qi. My Zhenyuan has completely recovered. But it will not be easy to get rid of the fire poison. Yi Chen could feel that although the fire poison in his body had been suppressed by the boundless Zhenyuan, it was still very tenacious. It was like maggots in one's bones, slowly eating away at his flesh and bones. Although he had already trained to the realm of regrowing broken limbs, it only applied to the limbs. If the injuries on the main body were fatal, it would still be extremely dangerous. Whatever, I won't be able to get rid of the fire poison in a short period of time. But it should be fine after a while. Yichen did not think much of this fire poison. He was not a normal person, and his body was not ordinary either. A mere fire poison would not be able to kill him. Turning his head, Yichen saw a lot of people. Almost all of the upper echelons of the school had arrived. Elder Yi. Seeing Yichen wake up, Li Zhangfeng let out a sigh of relief. Yichen faintly nodded. I've made you guys worry. Elder Yi, you're being too polite. Elder Ye's misfortune turned into fortune is our school's fortune. Alright, I wonder who the Life and Death King was? Was it because of our school? Once the battle ended, Li Zhangfeng and the others immediately rushed over. However, Yichen was recovering his Zhen Yuan, so they waited beside him without disturbing him. Yichen shook his head. I'm not sure either, but it most likely has nothing to do with the school. This was purely his intuition. Alright, I'm going to close up and heal. If there is nothing, don't disturb me. The fire poison remaining in his body was more or less a problem, dragging down a lot of his Zhen Yuan. With a flicker, Yichen flew toward his elder's mountain. Inside the secret room under the great elder's palace, Yichen sat on a stone platform with his legs crossed and a storage ring in his hand. I wonder how much wealth a Life and Death King has? After killing Blood Hand King, Yichen obtained Blood Hand King's storage ring, armor, and gloves. The armor was a peak semi-supreme grade armor, and the gloves were a bit better, pseudo-supreme grade. Life and Death Kings were divided into different levels. Without a doubt, be it Giant Wolf King, Poison Fire King, or Blood Hand King, they were all ordinary Life and Death Kings. Their strength was not too high, and it was quite normal for them not to have supreme grade artifacts. Not everyone had the same fortune as Yichen. Relying on his powerful soul power, Yichen erased Blood Hand King's soul imprint on the ring and sent his soul power inside. Blood Hand King's wealth was quite average. There were more than 30,000 top-grade spirit stones. More than 50 million high-grade spirit stones. There were 3 kinds of supreme-grade materials. The most common supreme-grade metal, star iron, 30 supreme-grade fire cloud stones, and 13 supreme-grade ice stones. Star iron was the most common material for forging supreme-grade artifacts. For example, Yichen had Death Chi iron. However, it was only a small piece, and it wasn't enough to forge a supreme-grade sword. Therefore, he needed to add other metals, and star iron was undoubtedly the most suitable. Although this metal was common, its compatibility was very high. It wouldn't be repelled by other metals, nor would it repel other metals. The amount of star iron in Blood Hand King's storage ring was several tens of thousands of gene, but it was extremely small, only half the size of a human head. On the other hand, among the 3 supreme-grade materials Yichen had bought in Gemstone Islands, there was also a fist-sized chunk of star iron. Adding the 2 together, it was more or less enough to forge a supreme-grade sword. As for fire cloud stone and ice stone, they were also good materials for forging supreme-grade artifacts. Fire cloud stone could turn the artifact's attribute into fire, while ice stone could turn the artifact into ice. Both were very rare. The other 2 supreme-grade materials Yichen had obtained from Gemstone Islands were an egg-sized beehive iron and a finger-sized red copper. Altogether, Yichen had 5 supreme-grade materials. Apart from this, Blood Hand King's storage ring also contained a large amount of upper-grade and semi-supreme-grade materials. This is great. I won't lack materials to forge upper-grade and semi-supreme-grade swords. Although Yichen had bought a lot of upper-grade and semi-supreme-grade materials, they couldn't keep up with his consumption. If he wanted to learn upper-grade sword forging art to perfection, this amount of materials was clearly insufficient, not to mention semi-supreme-grade sword forging art. Yichen's storage ring was an upper-grade storage ring, even better than Blood Hand King's. After storing all of Blood Hand King's belongings into his own ring, Yichen began to take inventory. Spirit Stones. Supreme-grade Spirit Stones, 50,000 in total. Upper-grade Spirit Stones, more than 160 million. 5 Supreme-grade materials, Star Iron, Beehive Iron, Red Copper, Fire Cloud Stone, and Ice Stone. Other precious items were 2 million Zhenyuan crystals, a 3,000-year-old upper-grade fire pear tree, and a number of soul stones. These were the most precious items, and even life and death kings might not necessarily have them. Apart from these, Yi Chen's storage ring still contained all sorts of items. Upper-grade materials, upper-grade spirit grasses, artifacts of various grades. Blood Hand King's wealth wasn't that great, but it was easy to understand. At Life and Death Realm, the most important thing was to raise one's cultivation base. If one had something good, they would exchange it with others or buy it with supreme-grade spirit stones. It could be said that the cultivation base of a Life and Death King was a huge fortune in itself. Unfortunately, this fortune had already been digested by him. Faintly letting out a breath, Yi Chen's attention shifted from the storage ring. It's time to expel the fire poison. As long as the fire poison wasn't expelled, it would be a disaster. Yi Chen didn't want to have to divide his Zhenyuan to suppress the fire poison while fighting others. Circulating green lotus sword arts, Yi Chen's entire body glowed with a green radiance. This was the sign of Zhenyuan and his body fusing, a sign of activating a cultivation technique. From head to toe, there wasn't a single part of his body that didn't contain Zhenyuan. Under his inner vision, Yi Chen slightly creased his brows. This fire poison had actually occupied a part of his body. Within the range of the fire poison, all of his cells had been contaminated, turning them into the base of the fire poison. The vitality and Zhenyuan in his cells had also become the nourishment of the fire poison, strengthening its power. Raising his inner vision to the limit, Yi Chen couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The fire poison seemed to be suppressed by his boundless Zhenyuan, but what made his scalp go numb was that any Zhenyuan that came in contact with the fire poison was being transformed into fire poison. This process was very minute, so minute that it was almost undetectable. Seems like I've underestimated the fire poison's harmfulness. Yi Chen thought for a bit, then took out a few ice-attributed upper-grade spirit plants from his storage ring, chewed them up, and swallowed them. The ice-cold spirit liquid slowly spread to his 5 viscera and 6 bowels, his limbs, and hundreds of meridians. Only the fire poison was excluded. Fortunately, with the effect of the ice-cold spirit liquid, the fire poison's devouring of Zhenyuan and life force slowed down. Seeing this, Yi Chen swallowed dozens of ice-attributed upper-grade spirit plants, causing his body to cool down. His body temperature dropped to below a normal person's, just like a block of ice. There are no more ice-attributed upper-grade spirit plants. I'm afraid it will be hard to suppress. Only now did Yi Chen pay attention to the fire poison. This fire poison was vastly different from the ordinary ones. Right, let's see if the extreme-grade ice stone will work. Yi Chen didn't dare to swallow the ice stone, but he could wear it on his body to affect the fire poison. So cold. Holding the ice stone in his hand was fine, since he could use Zhenyuan to resist the low temperature. However, Yi Chen needed the ice stone to suppress the fire poison, so he naturally wouldn't use Zhenyuan to repel it. The surface of his skin was covered in a layer of frost. If an astral-reaching expert were to approach Yi Chen at this moment, they would immediately suffer from frostbite. If they were too close, they might even be frozen into an ice sculpture, without any vitality. Enduring the bone-chilling cold, Yi Chen smiled bitterly and took out the painting. Perhaps Senior Yuan Emperor knows what's going on with this fire poison? The painting unfolded, and Yi Chen poured in Zhenyuan. Buzz. The ink figure on the way came to life, turning around and walking out of the painting. What's the trouble now? Yuan Emperor's image asked subconsciously. Yi Chen said, Senior Yuan Emperor, do you know what kind of fire poison is in my body? In fact, there was no need for Yi Chen to ask. Yuan Emperor's image had already sensed Yi Chen's abnormality. The latter's body temperature was even lower than an iceberg. If this continued, he would freeze to death. Placing his palm on Yi Chen's shoulder, Yuan Emperor's image poured a strand of Zhenyuan into Yi Chen's body. After a long while, he said solemnly, "This is star fire poison." Star fire poison? Yi Chen didn't understand. Yuan Emperor's image explained, in the core of a star, apart from the high temperature, there is also a frightening fire poison. Normally, this fire poison wouldn't gather together, and would be very scattered. However, as time passes, the fire poison in the core of the star would gather together, forming a star poison fire drill. This star poison fire drill has an extremely high density of fire poison. Gradually, it mutated, turning into a strange poison that's hard to remove. Who did you fight with? How strong was he? Yuan Emperor's image asked. An ordinary life and death king. Poison Fire King was not a powerful life and death king. He was only a bit stronger than Giant Wolf King. The Yuan Emperor's image said, with his strength, it's impossible for him to cultivate the poison and fire profundities to a high level, and it's impossible for him to create something comparable to the star fire poison. If I'm not wrong, he definitely has the star poison fire drill, and he's using the star poison to fuse with his own strength to attack you. Star poison fire drills fire poison. No wonder. Yi Chen suddenly understood. Poison Fire King was a human, but he was using his mouth to spit out energy. He should have a star poison fire drill inside his body to complement his attack. Then, how do I remove it? Yuan Emperor's image shook his head. It's very difficult. If I weren't dead, removing the star fire poison would be very simple. However, although I have a large amount of Zhen Yuan sealed in my body, I'm not a living person. If I forcibly remove the poison for you, a single mistake would cause your body to collapse. Only if you can cultivate broken limb regrowth to the late stage would I dare to try. But if you can cultivate it to the late stage, perhaps you won't need my help. You can slowly remove it, and you'll eventually succeed. Chapter 880. Of course, it's not like there's no other way. I can think of at least 4. Yuan Emperor was, after all, a peerless figure who could shake heaven and earth. His strength could be ranked at the forefront of titled monarchs since ancient times. With such high strength, his knowledge was naturally not lacking. Which 4? Yi Chen asked. The first is to raise the spirit body's rank. You're currently at the 4th step. If you raise it to the 5th step, the star fire poison will be easily removed. You should also know that the spirit body is harder to raise with each step. 4th step spirit body is only the ordinary standard for life and death kings, while 5th step spirit body is the average. The difference between the 4th and 5th step is huge, and the poison resistance will also increase by tenfold. 5th step spirit body, easier said than done. Yi Chen smiled bitterly. The reason he could raise his spirit body to the 4th step was thanks to the 5,000 years old Sky Fiend Fire Spirit Fruit. Without it, it would have taken him several months or even half a year to raise his spirit body's rank. Raising his spirit body to the 5th step would be several times more difficult than entering life and death realm. Yuan Emperor's projection naturally knew how difficult it was to raise the spirit body's rank, so he smiled. Raising it through normal means is unlikely. It would take too much time, and the star fire poison would have long entered your heart. What I'm saying is to find some treasures that can raise the spirit body's rank, such as the Sky Fiend Fire Spirit Fruit or the Dragon Scale Fruit. Of course, if you can find the fresh blood of a giant dragon king, the effect wouldn't be any worse than the Dragon Scale Fruit. Giant Dragon King. Yi Chen's brows twitched. Su Jing was a golden dragon, so she more or less met the requirements. However, Su Jing hadn't completely transformed into a golden dragon, and she wasn't a giant dragon king either. By the time she met the requirements, it would be too late. What about the second? The first was too difficult. Whether it was the Sky Fiend Fire Spirit Fruit, Dragon Scale Fruit, or Giant Dragon King's fresh blood, they were all extremely difficult. The second is relatively easier. Become a life and death king. Yuan Emperor smiled and continued, wait until you become a life and death king. Not to mention purifying your Zhen Yuan to king grade, your undying body will also reach flesh and blood derivation realm. A mere starfire poison will be no different from impurities. This was indeed a little simpler. It was easier than cultivating the immortal body to the later stages of limb rebirth. Although it was a different path to the same goal, the way to solve it was different. As long as Yi Chen comprehended a bit more life Tao, advancing to life and death realm would be 90% certain. Of course, relying on entering life and death realm was a bit risky. Who knew how long it would take? It could be as short as 3 to 5 months, or as long as 3 to 5 years. The third method is the hardest for you, but also the simplest. Raise your destruction sword intent to the 6th level, and use it to eliminate the active star fire poison. Once it's active, the star fire poison will turn into a dead object, which can be easily removed. Eliminating the active star fire poison could already be considered a profound and microscopic level. After all, ordinary people would find it hard to understand that fire poison was a kind of poison. Peak 5th step destruction sword intent. To be honest, you've given me quite a shock. If it were an ordinary poison, it wouldn't be able to do anything to you. If the density of the star fire poison was not high enough, it wouldn't be able to do anything to you. Unfortunately, the density of the star fire poison is too high, and it has mutated into a strange poison. Only an ordinary 7th step sword intent can eliminate its active star fire poison. Converted to your destruction sword intent, it's at the 6th step. Yuan Emperor quite admired Yi Chen. This kind of sword Dao genius with astonishing potential would be a frightening genius even in the ancient and medieval eras. Martial will and sword will were the same as spirit body. The higher one went, the harder it would be to improve. If the 4th step spirit body was the ordinary standard of life and death kings, then the 5th step martial will would be the ordinary standard of life and death kings, and the 6th step martial will would be the average standard. Yi Chen had already surpassed the average standard, because his peak 5th step destruction sword intent was equivalent to a peak 6th step sword intent. This seems a bit better. Hearing these words, Yi Chen faintly nodded. A peak 5th step destruction sword intent alone would be hard to reach the 6th step. However, he was different. He had the 5th step immortal sword intent. The two great sword intents resonated with each other, allowing him to improve at an extremely fast pace. Recently, he had already felt signs of his destruction sword intent advancing. Once his destruction sword intent reached the 6th step, even if Yi Chen's battle strength didn't increase by several folds, it would at least skyrocket. The further one advanced, the greater the gap between the levels. For example, the gap between the 4th and 5th step was not as big as the gap between the 5th and 6th step, and the gap between the 6th and 7th step was not as big as the gap between the 7th and 8th step. Legend had it that at the 9th or even 10th step, each step was like a whole new world. The 4th method is the fastest way to solve your problem, and that is to find a peak king to help you expel the poison. It's best if they have some achievements in dissolving strange poisons. If it doesn't work, find a peak king who cultivates ice profound. These two peak kings can easily dispel the mutated star fire poison without any danger. Right? That demonic human emperor is not bad. She should be able to help you expel the poison. Yuan Emperor's silhouette thought of something. Yuan Emperor's first thought was demonic human emperor, because she was the strongest king he had seen in this era. However, Yi Chen's first thought was Xianhou. Xuanhou's strength might not be as good as demonic human emperor's, but in terms of dissolving strange poisons, demonic human emperor should be far inferior to her. Every profession had its own specialization, and this principle was applicable everywhere. Let's see how it goes. Rather than looking for demonic human emperor, he might as well look for Xianhou. The former might not agree, but the latter was much more reliable. Although he couldn't return to True Spirit Continent, he could find someone to pass the message. You're right, she might not save you. Yuan Emperor's silhouette nodded. Before that, I'll teach you a great poison dispelling art. Great poison dispelling art? Upon hearing this, Yi Chen knew that this art was not ordinary at all. Great poison dispelling art is a heaven-grade high-grade art. It can only be used to save people and oneself. Don't look down on it. If not for the lack of time, this art could easily dispel the mutated star fire poison. I'll teach you this art, but you must cultivate it as soon as possible. Only then can you suppress the mutated star fire poison without relying on ice attribute energy. As a peerless figure of his era, Yuan Emperor seemed to know a little bit of everything. The higher one's level was, the greater the danger one would face, and the more bizarre it would be. The less one knew, the less one's ability to survive. The more one knew, the less one had to worry about. This was the so-called having more skills is never a burden. All right. Yi Chen nodded vigorously. Don't reject it. Yuan Emperor's silhouette pointed at Yi Chen's forehead. In an instant, a complicated art appeared in Yi Chen's mind. After 3 breaths, Yuan Emperor's silhouette retracted his finger. Opening his eyes, Yi Chen said gratefully, "Thank you, senior. No need to thank me. The stronger you are, the more tricks you have, the greater the hope of preserving Elysium in the future. The unfinished battles of ancient, medieval, and modern times will still depend on you all." Yuan Emperor's silhouette sighed. Yi Chen knew what Yuan Emperor was talking about, so he asked, "What realm do I need to reach?" "At least my realm." Yi Chen was silent. A realm like Yuan Emperor's had already disappeared in this era. Of course, just you alone is not enough. In my era, there were a lot of people with the same strength as the demonic human emperor. Even so, once the war broke out, they all fell one by one. The people from the other world are very powerful. Some of them are not even weaker than me. If Elysium is a low-level civilization, then they are a high-level civilization. Since the ancient times, we have been fighting against them, fighting for a place for our future generations to live. I hope that this world that belongs to us will continue to exist. Yuan Emperor's silhouette looked at Yi Chen. The sword in my hand must be stained with the blood of the powerful warriors from the other world. Yi Chen said seriously, "I believe you can do it, but the premise is that you can survive. Finally, you have to remember that powerful warriors grow from killing. No matter if it is the other world or the same world, as long as it is your enemy, do not be soft-hearted. Kill when you need to kill, and if you don't need to kill, you have to lower the threat to the minimum. You should understand what I am saying." Yuan Emperor's silhouette said coldly. Yi Chen will remember. Right now, Yuan Emperor was the invincible Yuan Emperor. Being soft-hearted was never the right choice, especially in this world where only powerful warriors were respected. Yi Chen could imagine that when Yuan Emperor climbed to the top, he must have stepped on countless corpses, some from the same world, and some from the other world. "I don't think I need to worry. You can comprehend the destruction sword intent, so this shouldn't be a problem. All right, I've taught you what I should, and I've said what I should. Now, you have to rely on yourself." The primitive emperor's image walked into the climbing heights and seeing far, painting and blended into the ink figure with his back facing the outside world. Putting away the painting, Yi Chen pondered for a while. Life and death realm is the starting point. The road ahead is still long, but it suits me just fine. Yi Chen enjoyed the process of growing stronger. The difficulty of cultivating poison conversion great art was extremely high, and there were many steps as well. In order to get started, one had to first learn how to use the poison conversion great art to understand the basic composition of any poison, from macroscopic to microscopic. Then one had to break down the poison, because some strange poisons, once broken down, would not be as harmful. Finally, one had to use the poison conversion great art to refine it step by step. Of the 3 steps, one could be considered to have gotten started, and the other 2 would be accomplished. Only by accomplishing all of them would one be considered to have minor success. After minor success, one would have to convert the poison conversion great art into instinct. The reason why one had to convert it into instinct was that some poisons could spread very quickly, and one would have to race against time. If one couldn't, one would naturally lose, and the loss would be one's life. Reaching this step would be considered major success. As for grand completion, it would be the most difficult step. When the poison conversion great art reached grand completion, one's body would produce a mysterious poison conversion energy. This energy had its own spirituality and had already fused with one's instinct. The majority of poisons would immediately be broken down upon contact, as if they had met their nemesis. Let's get started first. Sitting cross-legged on the stone platform, Yi Chen began to cultivate the poison conversion great art. Chapter 881. The great poison conversion art was worthy of being a high-grade heaven-grade secret art. Its cultivation difficulty was not inferior to the 5-star mid-grade heaven-grade secret art, blood-severing ghost finger. After spending a whole week, Yi Chen had barely grasped the basics. Through the great poison conversion art, he could observe the basic composition of the variant starfire poison. However, observing was observing. It didn't mean that Yi Chen could dissect the poison. After another week, Yi Chen was able to decompose the star fire poison, completing the second step. Unfortunately, he could only dissect the spreading poison, which was the vanguard of the poison. Eradicating the poison was not something that could be done in a day or two. Moreover, while Yi Chen was dissecting the vanguard, the poison was also transforming into Zhenyuan, strengthening itself. Strictly speaking, Yi Chen's dissecting speed was not as fast as the poison's Zhenyuan transformation. As time went on, the poison would grow stronger and stronger, and Yi Chen would no longer be its opponent. His body would become the domain of the poison. I have to reach the third step and cultivate the great poison conversion art to minor completion. The poison conversion great art of small perfection could refine the star fire poison that had been broken down. Even if it could not completely eradicate the star fire poison, it could at least prevent the star fire poison from turning into quintessence and strengthening itself. Xiao Chun could use this time to find other methods to eradicate the star fire poison. Blood Sky Continent was the second continent of Elysium. Although it was only half the size of True Spirit Continent, its widest point was 30 million li, and its narrowest point was 18 million li. It was shaped like a huge coconut, and comparing it to a heart was not an exaggeration. Just like True Spirit Continent, Blood Sky Continent was also filled with all kinds of danger zones and forbidden zones. Some of them were so dangerous that even life and death kings would find it hard to survive. Bloodlight Ocean was ranked 4th on Blood Sky Continent. Its name was Bloodlight Ocean, but it was not a real ocean. Bloodlight Ocean was located in the eastern part of Iron Blood region. Blood-colored chi drifted throughout the year, resembling a bloodlight or a blood ocean. Therefore, it was named Bloodlight Ocean. Bloodlight Sea had two superficial dangers. One was blood demons. Bloodlight Ocean was a breeding ground for blood demons. The number of blood demons inside was enormous, and no one knew exactly how many there were. Low-rank blood demons, middle-rank blood demons, high-rank blood demons, blood demon generals, blood demon kings. Everything that one could imagine could be found there. Due to the special rules of Bloodlight Ocean and its boundless power, the Blood Sky Continent's demonic beast kings and life and death kings couldn't erase this breeding ground of blood demons. They could only allow it to exist as long as the blood demons didn't come out. The second was the chaotic will. If one stayed in the Bloodlight Sea for a long time, one would be invaded by the chaotic will. If it was light, one would become a lunatic. If it was heavy, one would become bloodthirsty and become a member of the heterogeneous blood devils. Due to the existence of these two great dangers, even though the Bloodlight Sea's ranking wasn't as high as the third-ranked King Grade Forbidden Zone, its reputation was greater than the third-ranked King Grade Forbidden Zone. Just the mention of it would cause one's face to change. Old Chang, this is our second time coming to the Bloodlight Ocean after 100 years. At the entrance of Bloodlight Sea, space shattered, and two middle-aged men walked out. That's right. 100 years have passed, and my descendants have all grown old. Monkey, last time, 4 of us went in, but only 2 came out. This time, you and I must come out alive. The middle-aged man with a long beard, who looked to be in his 50s, sighed emotionally. The middle-aged man called Monkey was not a human, but a monkey that had cultivated into a demonic king. He nodded heavily. Definitely. This time, if we come out alive, I will take out the supreme grade monkey wine that I have kept for more than 200 years to share with you. You should have given me some when you came. So stingy. Fine, for the sake of your supreme grade monkey wine, I must survive. Otherwise, I will suffer a great loss. If a knowledgeable person was here, he would definitely recognize that the middle-aged man with a long beard and the middle-aged man with a pointy mouth and ape-like chin were the solitary kings of the Blood Sky Continent. They were the Anika Spear King and the Iron Monkey King. Although the Anika Spear King and the Iron Monkey King were not of the same race. One was a human, the other a demonic beast. They had a very good relationship. It could be said that they were brothers that had gone through life and death together. 100 years ago, they had another brother who was also a demonic king called the Black-Horned King. Unfortunately, the Black-Horned King had been killed by the Blood Devil King of the Bloodlight Ocean. Come, let's go in. This time, no matter what, we must get a blood crystal flower. The Anika Spear King's figure flashed, entering the Bloodlight Ocean. The Iron Monkey King followed closely behind. A few days later, it rained heavily outside the entrance of the Bloodlight Ocean. The sky was overcast, and dark clouds loomed overhead. Swish! A sword light cut through the sky, speeding over. When it was less than 100 meters away from the entrance, the sword light vanished, and a young figure appeared. He had a head of thick black hair, wearing a loose blue robe. It was Yi Chen. After training the poison melting great art to the entry level, he was able to suppress the starfire poison for a while. Then, he stopped training and started to prepare for the cure. After asking around, Yi Chen found out that there was a king-grade forbidden zone in the Iron Blood region called Bloodlight Ocean. There was a kind of blood crystal flower that was neither a plant nor a mineral. Eating it could increase the strength of one's spirit body. Depending on the age of the blood crystal flower, the effect would vary. A 10,000 years old blood crystal flower could increase one's spirit body by half a step. Of course, this was only for those below the 5th step. Even 10,000 years old blood crystal flowers would not be able to increase the spirit body from the 5th step to the 6th step. Although the effect of the blood crystal flower was far inferior to the Sky Fiend Fire Spirit Fruit, it was something that Yi Chen urgently needed. Even if it couldn't raise his spirit body to the 5th step, it could still strengthen his spirit body and increase his poison resistance. Bloodlight Ocean is a dangerous place even for life and death kings. I don't have to fear the chaotic will as long as it's not too excessive. However, I have to be on guard against blood demon kings. Blood demons were born from blood. They were ever-changing and had no concrete form. When facing an enemy, if they found a flaw, they would turn into a bloodlight and drill into one's body. Even if one had gargantuan skills, one could only die with hatred. However, I must obtain the blood crystal flower. With a flicker, Yi Chen turned into a sword light and entered Bloodlight Ocean. Bloodlight Ocean was like a universe, boundless as far as the eye could see. It was clearly raining outside, but there was not the slightest movement inside. The sky was bright red, and the ground was covered by blood chi currents. The blood chi currents were bobbing up and down, like an unceasingly flowing blood ocean. This ocean was even emitting a blood radiance. What a powerful law! As soon as Yi Chen entered Bloodlight Ocean, he immediately felt his body sink several dozen meters. The pressure and gravitational force acting on his body were 100 times that of the outside world. As for his soul power, it could only spread several dozen leagues. Fortunately, this Bloodlight Ocean differs from person to person. The rules are not rigid. Bloodlight Ocean adjusted the pressure according to one's cultivation base. For example, if Yi Chen was at the peak of the 3rd layer, the pressure would be 100 times. However, if it were a life and death king, the pressure would be 1,000 times. Thus, the gap between the two did not widen, remaining within the same range. Otherwise, 100 times pressure would be nothing to life and death kings. They could still fly at high speed, and Yi Chen couldn't catch up to them. However, they could easily catch up to Yi Chen. Swish! The blood chi currents condensed, and a blood light pounced at Yi Chen. Die! Yi Chen pointed his finger, and a sword light shattered the blood light. The destruction sword intent prevented the blood light from condensing again. Flying close to the ground, Yi Chen flew toward the depths of Bloodlight Ocean. A day passed, and Yi Chen had a rough understanding of Bloodlight Ocean's details. The blood demons of Bloodlight Ocean were usually hidden within the blood chi currents. Once someone approached and triggered the blood chi currents, they would turn into blood light and attack crazily. If one's luck was bad, and the blood chi currents triggered happened to be the blood demon's body, one would be in for a miserable time, having their flesh and blood sucked dry. Yi Chen had encountered it once. Fortunately, it was only an ordinary blood demon general, which was equivalent to a Sea of Soul Realm expert. Moreover, Yi Chen's destruction sword intent and immortal sword intent were its bane. The consequences could be easily imagined. Worthy of being called Bloodlight Ocean. It's too dangerous. Amidst the blood chi currents, Yi Chen sighed. Bloodlight Ocean was filled with blood chi currents. In other words, there could be blood demons hidden everywhere. Encountering blood demons below the Blood Demon King realm was fine, but encountering a blood demon king, even Yi Chen would be in mortal danger. After all, he couldn't release his sword domain and sword intent all the time. Rumble. An earth-shattering explosion could be heard from the front. Battle of Kings. Yi Chen's eyes squinted. Let's go take a look. I'll be on guard in the future. The dangers of Bloodlight Ocean were not only visible, but also hidden. Yi Chen didn't know much about them, so he had to learn more to strengthen his survivability. The battlefield was quite far away, so Yi Chen followed the energy ripples. Not wanting to get too close, Yi Chen stopped far away. Open! The vertical silver eye on his forehead opened, and Yi Chen looked over with his soul eye. In his line of sight, 3 figures were engaged in a fierce battle. Boundless energy swept out in all directions, sweeping away the blood chi currents and clearing out an empty space. Of these 3 figures, 2 were clearly from the same group. One wielded a spear and was a human king. The other had transformed into a demonic monkey and was a beast king. The last one had a blood chi current around his body, and his eyes were blood red. It's really a hetero blood demon king. Bloodlight Ocean's chaotic will would have a greater influence on the intruder. If one couldn't endure the invasion of the chaotic will, they would lose their nature and turn into a berserk demon. As time passed, they would suffer the invasion of the blood chi and slowly be transformed into a hetero blood demon, whose danger was no less than that of a blood demon. It should be known that Bloodlight Ocean had existed for countless years. Countless kings had entered and been transformed into hetero blood demon kings by the chaotic will and blood chi. More importantly, according to the observations of observant people, the lifespan of hetero blood demon kings far exceeded 1,000 years. As for how long they could live, it was hard to say. Thus, even if they didn't meet a blood demon king, they would still die if they met a mutant blood demon king. Perhaps they weren't peak kings when they were alive because peak kings wouldn't be affected by the chaotic intent. However, there was another possibility, and that was that a powerful king might not have a strong intent, but his cultivation was ridiculously strong. Chapter 882. Boom Boom Boom. The heterogeneous blood demon king was extremely powerful. It was even stronger than Poison Fire King and Blood Hand King. In a one-on-one fight, Yi Chen was definitely not its match. He could only run away. After all, the soul light was useless against such a heterogeneous blood demon king. Their souls were chaotic and could not be affected by dizziness, unless the soul light was strong enough to destroy the opponent's soul in one blow. The heterogeneous blood demon king was powerful, but his opponent was not weak either. The spear-wielding human king's strength was similar to Poison Fire King's. Although the demonic monkey king was slightly weaker, it was not by much. The human and the demon worked together and suppressed the heterogeneous blood demon king in a short while. Soul-seeking impermanence spear. The long-bearded middle-aged man roared and thrust his spear. The spear pierced through the heterogeneous blood demon king's head without any trace. Break for me. The demonic monkey king was not big. It was only 3 meters tall. Its body was very agile. In a flash, it appeared behind the heterogeneous blood demon king and slashed down with its claws. Poochie. The heterogeneous blood demon king was dismembered. Blood splattered everywhere. Ha, monkey, well done. The long-bearded middle-aged man kept his spear and stood still. The demonic monkey king turned into human form and laughed. It was also because of your good cooperation. The human and the demon had worked together countless times. They had long formed a tacit understanding. When the two worked together, they could defeat enemies that were much stronger than them. Such a brilliant spear art. It actually contains the wind profound and the cloud profound. These 2 profounds are the most proficient in transformations. When combined, its power might not be comparable to other fused profounds, but it is hard to defend against. In the early days, Yi Chen had also studied the cloud mentality. Later on, he switched to studying the thunder mentality, which was related to the cloud mentality. But he had limited energy, so it was impossible for him to study everything. He could only choose the one that was most useful to him and study it when he had more time. Of course, after so many years, the cloud intent had also advanced to the cloud profound. It was only 10% of the realm. Closing his soul eye, Yi Chen turned and left. The bloodlight ocean was boundless. The space inside was huge, far beyond what the outside world could see. As time passed, Yi Chen had already stayed in the bloodlight ocean for 3 days. During these 3 days, he could clearly feel a chaotic will trying to invade his soul sea and infect his soul. His soul membrane could only defend against soul power, but it was helpless against a will attack. Fortunately, he still had the Destruction Sword Soul and the Immortal Sword Soul in his Sea of Soul. The 2 rank 5 Sword Souls were guarding the Sea of Soul. Once the chaotic will invaded, it was immediately minced into nothingness. The chaotic will was nothing to him. In these 3 days, he had encountered true danger twice. The first time was when he was surrounded by blood demon generals. Thousands of blood demon generals charged at him, causing blood light to flutter in the air. The second time was when he encountered a hetero blood demon king wandering around bloodlight ocean. Its strength was not weaker than the hetero blood demon king he encountered 3 days ago, and was even slightly stronger. Facing thousands of blood demon generals, Yi Chen used all his means and consumed a third of his Zhen Yuan to kill half of them before escaping. Facing the blood demon, Yi Chen didn't have any other thoughts, so he directly fled. In a one-on-one battle, he was not the opponent of the blood demon. Tangling with it would only waste his Zhen Yuan, which was not worth it. He didn't come to Bloodlight Ocean to fight, but for the blood crystal flower. Bloodlight Ocean space is extremely sturdy. I can't travel through space. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to escape from the blood demon. Walking on the road, Yi Chen kept his soul power at all times. But this won't do. If I want to roam the king-grade forbidden zone, it's best to raise my cultivation to life and death realm. Otherwise, I might die. One had to be alive to enjoy opportunities. If the danger was too great, death would be inevitable. Yeah, there's a mountain range here. Yi Chen stopped and sensed with his soul power. There was a mountain range 20 li ahead. In the Bloodlight Ocean, there were very few mountain ranges. Most of them were plains and hills, and the blood crystal flower would normally grow in the mountain ranges. It could be underground on the cliff of a mountain peak, or at the bottom of a lake in the mountain range. In short, the blood crystal flower would appear anywhere in the mountain range, and it didn't need a specific environment. Since there's a mountain range, there must be a blood crystal flower. Let's go in. Dispelling distracting thoughts, Yi Chen's gaze turned sharp as he cautiously entered the mountain range. Since Yi Chen's soul power could only extend a few dozen li, Yi Chen couldn't see how big the mountain range was or what the environment was like. He could only take one step at a time. The place Yi Chen entered was a canyon. The canyon towered into the clouds. Looking up, one could only see a sliver of the sky. It was extremely gloomy and quiet. Swish, swish, swish. After walking for 7 li, a dozen bloodlights suddenly shot at Yi Chen. Sword domain. Yi Chen didn't panic in the face of danger. He released his sword domain, and the enormous sword pressure caused the bloodlights to slow down. Unsheathing the evil vanquishing sword, Yi Chen slashed one after another. His powerful sword chi tore apart the bloodlights, while his destruction sword intent made them unable to reform and gradually dissipate. Jie. The true threat had arrived. The blood chi in front of Yi Chen converged, forming a blood devil king. This blood devil king's arms were like bamboo poles, extremely thin and long. Its palms were like eagle claws, incomparably sharp. Swish. With an air-piercing sound, Blood Demon King's right arm rapidly lengthened and turned into a blood-colored drill, drilling toward Yi Chen's forehead at a speed as fast as blood-colored lightning. Ding! Raising the evil vanquishing sword, Yi Chen blocked the Blood Devil King's sneak attack. But the Blood Devil King's terror lay in its ability to change its shape at will. After the Blood Devil King's right arm was deflected, it lengthened once more and coiled around Yi Chen like a red thread. Extinguish! Yi Chen didn't dare to be careless. He executed bewitching mirror shattering, sealing the red thread in a spatial mirror and shattering it into thousands of pieces. Congealing water. Like a sword light, Yi Chen flew close to the ground and thrust his sword out. Blood Demon King sneered and unexpectedly ignored Yi Chen's sword. his body rapidly turned into a blood-colored hedgehog, each spike several hundred meters long, and launched a full-range attack. Yi Chen's congealing water landed on the Blood Devil King's body first. A burst of power instantly tore the Blood Devil King's body apart. Sword intent and death chi gushed out, completely extinguishing the Blood Devil King's vitality. A low-level Blood Devil King. There's no way it can resist my congealing water. Yi Chen had a natural advantage over Blood Devil Kings. Firstly, the evil vanquishing sword contained an innate suppressive power. Secondly, Yi Chen's peak 5th step destruction sword intent was a great killing weapon for the Blood Devil King. Struck by an attack containing destruction sword intent, the Blood Devil King would find it hard to reform its body, unless it was a mid- or high-level Blood Devil King. Thirdly, Yi Chen had already comprehended Death Dao. In this aspect, he was no weaker than ordinary Life and Death Kings. With these three advantages, even some Life and Death Kings stronger than Yi Chen couldn't kill a low-level Blood Devil King as easily as Yi Chen. With the Blood Devil King's death, a blood-colored crystal fell on the ground. Blood Demon Crystal? Yi Chen extended his hand and sucked the crystal into his hand. Blood Demon Crystal was a supreme-grade material that could only be nurtured within a Blood Devil King's body. Inside a Blood Devil King's body, it didn't have a solid body. It could disperse and reform like the Blood Devil King at any time. However, once a Blood Devil King died, the crystal could no longer disperse and turned into a solid body. As a top-grade material, the Blood Demon Crystal had great uses. It could not only make up for one's own losses, replenish one's vitality, but also enhance the strength of one's spirit body. Moreover, it could be used as a material for forging treasures. If a treasure was integrated with the Blood Demon Crystal, it could absorb the opponent's vitality while attacking to replenish one's own losses. It was extremely overbearing. Although Life and Death Kings already had an undying body, with their flesh, bones, and Zhenyuan fused into one, before reaching the flesh derivation realm, using the undying body too many times wouldn't be able to bear it. At this moment, the body was still the dominant factor, and not Zhenyuan. Therefore, Blood Demon Crystal was extremely useful for Life and Death Kings at the Limb Rebirth realm. Of course, if one reached the flesh derivation realm, it wouldn't be a problem. Blood Demon Crystal could strengthen one's spirit body. Nobody would think that their spirit body was strong enough. 4th step spirit body could be upgraded to 5th step, and 5th step spirit body could be upgraded to 6th step. Finally, when one felt that ordinary Blood Demon Crystal could no longer strengthen one's spirit body, one could use it as a material and fuse it with other metals to forge an artifact. In short, Blood Demon Crystal was a low-end commodity among Life and Death Kings. A low-level Blood Demon Crystal was not inferior to a high-grade semi-supreme grade artifact. A mid-level Blood Demon Crystal was equivalent to a pseudo-supreme grade artifact. High level was equivalent to a supreme grade artifact. Many people came to the Bloodlight Ocean not only because of the Blood Crystal Flower, but also because of the existence of the Blood Demon King. If they could obtain a primary Blood Demon Crystal, it could be considered a harvest, even if it was not as valuable as the Blood Crystal Flower. Of course, if one wanted to obtain something, one had to pay a price. Ordinary Life and Death Kings would find it hard to kill a low-level Blood Demon King, unless they were like Yi Chen and possessed the Evil Shattering Sword, Destruction Sword Intent, or Immortal Sword Intent. Otherwise, if they encountered a Blood Demon King in Bloodlight Ocean, their chances of dying would be extremely high. As for peak kings and titled monarchs, the majority of them didn't care about low-level or mid-level Blood Demon Crystals. Rather than coming to Bloodlight Ocean, they might as well go to better places to try their luck and obtain better treasures. Of course, for their disciples and descendants, they might make a trip here sometimes. However, the chances of encountering them were simply too small, perhaps not even once in several hundred years. After obtaining the low-level Blood Demon Crystal, Yi Chen left the canyon and found a seemingly safe place to refine it, strengthening his spirit body. Chapter 883. As expected of the Blood Demon Crystal. It allowed my spirit body to improve a little from the peak of the 4th step. It's a pity that the low-level blood demon crystal can only help a fourth-step spirit body. The higher one's spirit body was, the harder it was to improve. The low-level blood demon crystal was still useful to Yi Chen, as it could improve the strength of his spirit body. However, for a fifth-step spirit body, it was useless no matter how many low-level blood demon crystals he had. This was because the human body had resistance. Using the same thing too many times would cause resistance and rejection. In the end, there would be no effect at all. It was like taking medicine. If one took too many of the same medicine, the effect would be minimal. Of course, although the low-level blood demon crystal couldn't improve Yi Chen's spirit body to the fifth step, it could push his fourth-step spirit body to the limit. The more he refined, the easier it would be for him to break through to the fifth-step spirit body. After all, most of the time, he still had to rely on himself to break through. Heavenly treasures weren't easy to find, and those that could improve the spirit body were even rarer. Senior Yuan Sovereign is right. The stronger the spirit body, the stronger the poison resistance. My spirit body has only improved a little. It may not seem like a big improvement, but I can feel that the starfire poison is less harmful to me. Letting out a breath, Yi Chen stood up with a smile on his face. Let's not worry about this for now. I'll continue looking for blood crystal flowers and try my luck to see if I can encounter other low-level blood demon kings. There were strong and weak low-level blood demon kings. Yi Chen wasn't a match for the strong ones, but at least he had a chance to escape. With the existence of Sword Domain, he could suppress the opponent's speed. Of course, it would be best if he didn't encounter a mid-level blood demon king. After passing through the canyon, Yi Chen arrived at the interior of the mountain range. Blood crystal flowers don't grow at a fixed location. It won't be easy to find them on the surface. I can use my soul power to search for them, but underground is a bit troublesome. On the surface of Bloodlight Ocean, Yi Chen's soul power could cover dozens of li. However, under the ground, the effect was dozens of times weaker, only able to penetrate 1 li or 2. Yi Chen couldn't even detect a blood crystal flower that was a bit deeper underground. Perhaps, there might even be a blood crystal flower several li under his feet. I can only try my luck. Yi Chen flew at a constant speed. In the mountain range, the terrain was complex. There were waterfalls, lakes, forests, but most of them were barren mountains. After passing by a barren mountain, Yi Chen suddenly stopped. It's a blood crystal flower fragment. On the barren mountain, a blood-red crystal was emitting a dazzling light. Picking up the blood-red crystal, Yi Chen sighed inwardly. Once the blood crystal flower was shattered, the effect would be reduced to 1% at most. Only a whole blood crystal flower would have a huge effect. Looking at the desolate mountain, Yi Chen understood that a fierce battle must have taken place here. Otherwise, no one would destroy the integrity of the blood crystal flower. After throwing away the blood crystal flower shards, Yi Chen continued to fly at a constant speed. 3 days later, Yi Chen had explored more than half of the mountain range. He is a low-level blood devil king. His opponent is a demon king. Yi Chen's eyes lit up. With the evil vanquishing sword and destruction sword intent, he was destined to be the nemesis of most low-level blood devil kings. Dozens of li away, a low-level blood devil king was fighting with a dog-type demon king. The dog-type demon king was only an ordinary demon king, and his strength was inferior to Poison Fire King and Blood Hand King. He was in a very sorry state. He wanted to escape, but he couldn't escape the pursuit of the Blood Devil King. He could only passively resist, roaring continuously. Damn it! The dog-type demon monarch roared and spat out a ball of light. The light sphere exploded, and half of the Blood Devil King's body was blown to pieces. But soon, the body reformed. Taking advantage of the short pause after the dog-type demon king used his trump card, the light sphere turned into a blood light and drilled into the dog-type demon king's body. The dog-type demon king's body shriveled at a visible speed. In the next moment, the blood light drilled out of the dog-type demon king's body, and its aura became even more powerful. Kill. With no time to lose, Yi Chen rushed forward. The Blood Devil King also discovered Yi Chen, and a cold light flashed in his eyes as he also rushed forward. The two rapidly approached each other. When they were only a kilometer away, Yichen released his sword domain, and a powerful sword pressure acted on the Blood Devil King's body, reducing his speed. Congealing water. Unsheathing the evil vanquishing sword, Yichen attacked. Puchi. Half of the Blood Devil King's body shattered, unable to reform. Although the remaining half of the Blood Devil King didn't die, his aura was much weaker. Fear flashed across his face as he quickly fled to the right. Unfortunately, the existence of the sword domain prevented him from displaying even half of his speed. Die. Bewitching mirror shattering was used, and the escaping Blood Devil King was shattered into thousands of pieces. A low-level Blood Devil crystal fell down. My luck is not bad. Another one. Reaching out his hand, Yichen sucked the Blood Devil crystal over with a satisfied expression. I have to find a place to refine the Blood Devil crystal and increase the strength of my spirit body. Yichen was used to fighting steadily. This bloodlight ocean was filled with dangers, and if he could increase his survivability a little bit, it would be good. The stronger his spirit body, the stronger his physical defense. Not good. Just as he was about to leave, Yichen became vigilant and soared into the sky. Rumble. A huge gully appeared on the ground below. Blood-red flames burned fiercely, burning the ground of the bloodlight ocean into blood-red crystals. The temperature was astonishing. In the distance, a blood-red light sped over. It wasn't a pure Blood Devil King, but a variant Blood Devil King. That was close. If I was a little slower, I would have been crippled even if I didn't die. In the air, Yichen narrowed his eyes, sizing up the variant Blood Devil King that attacked him. This mutant Blood Devil King was not a human, but a mantis demon king. That attack just now was launched with its scythe-like appendages, and it was shaped like a blade light. This mantis fey king has wings on its back and is very fast. It won't be easy to shake it off. If it attracts the attention of other Blood Devil Kings or variant Blood Devil Kings, I'll be in trouble. Previously, Yichen had been able to escape the pursuit of a variant Blood Devil King because that variant Blood Devil King was only slightly faster than him. Moreover, it was suppressed by sword domain and couldn't increase its speed. That was why Yichen was able to escape. On the other hand, this mantis fey king was twice as fast as Yichen. Even sword domain couldn't shake it off. Since that's the case, we can only fight it out. The Mantis Fey King was indeed much stronger than the Poison Fire King, but it was still within Yichen's range. In a one-on-one battle, Yichen felt that he could give it a try. Sword Domain Attack. Azure swords condensed one after another. With a thought from Yichen, the azure swords shot out, covering the sky as they attacked the Mantis Fey King, preventing him from approaching. Clang, clang, clang. The Mantis Fey King's two appendages were like two huge scythes. With a casual wave, a blood-colored light screen appeared. The azure swords were immediately sent flying when they collided with the light screen. Bewitching mirror shattering. Space distorted and compressed, turning into a mirror that sealed the Mantis Fey King inside. Shortly after, the mirror shattered as sharp spatial blades crazily cut at the Mantis Fey King's body. This variant Blood Devil King is also restrained by evil vanquishing power and destruction sword intent. Yichen revealed a trace of joy. The wounds on the Mantis Fey King's body couldn't be completely healed. Even with his undying body, his wounds were still extremely heavy. Of course, the variant Blood Devil King wasn't a pure-blood Blood Devil King after all, so the restraint wasn't that great. If it were a pure-blood Blood Devil King, it probably wouldn't even have 50% of its fighting strength left. The Mantis Fey King was extremely powerful. While being attacked, he also slashed out a blood-red flame pillar. Yichen hastily raised his sword to block. Boom! The blood-red flame erupted, and Yichen was sent flying 7 to 8 li. Opening his mouth, he spurted out a mouthful of steaming blood mist. So powerful! I'm afraid he's an extremely powerful existence even among low-step variant Blood Devil Kings. Ordinary life and death kings were also called low-step kings, which corresponded to low-step Blood Devil Kings and low-step variant Blood Devil Kings. Poison Fire King was merely a mid-level existence among low-step kings, and as for Giant Wolf King, he was a low-level existence. As for Mantis Fey King, he was a human king, and was more or less a high-level king. But I have sword domain. I can at least suppress him a little. Activating sword domain to the limit, the immense sword pressure caused the space of Bloodlight Ocean to become even more firm. Mantis Fey King's appendages gradually became more strenuous, becoming somewhat slower than before. Break for me. Exchanging his evil vanquishing sword for Sky Scorpio sword, Yichen slashed out. Sky Scorpio sword was, after all, Sky Scorpio sword. The sword energy it emitted caused one of Mantis Fey King's appendages to crystallize and shatter. Buzz. Right at this moment, Mantis Fey King also went berserk. The several thin wings on his back suddenly vibrated, and a blood-red thread flew over. Not good. The blood-red thread was too fast. Yichen couldn't dodge it completely, and his left arm was chopped off. Recover. After regrowing his left arm, Yichen gravely sized up Mantis Fey King. This was his first time clashing head-on with such a powerful opponent, and he didn't have the slightest confidence of victory. Truly, one can wear out iron shoes in a fruitless search only to find it by chance. The genius that several lords want to deal with actually appeared in Bloodlight Ocean and coincidentally ran into me. At an unknown time, a figure was standing on a mountain peak 10 li away. To be able to contend against a high-level low-step variant Blood Devil King, no wonder the lords listed him as a must-kill target. Once he enters life and death realm, I'm afraid even if my main body personally comes, I won't be able to do anything to him. In time, he'll definitely become another Shenhe. Let's use a soul attack to kill him. A sinister grin appeared on the figure's face as he squinted his eyes. From between his brows, a formless soul power shot out like an arrow, targeting Yichen. The soul power attack was too fast. Yichen didn't have the slightest chance to react before being struck by the soul power. Feeling a wave of dizziness, Yichen was struck head-on by Mantis Fey King, breaking several of his ribs and sending him flying while spurting blood. Someone used a soul attack to attack me. This was the thought that flashed through Yichen's mind. Impossible. The figure was gobsmacked. Who was he? He was a grand high-step king. Although he was only a spiritual projection, and his soul power couldn't compare to his main bodies, it was still not something a peak third-layer life and death chamber brat could resist. In his opinion, this soul attack should be able to easily destroy Yichen's soul power. Ruthlessly crashing into a mountain cliff, Yichen looked in the direction of the figure. It's a human king. Why did you attack me? Yichen's soul power was 5 times that of an ordinary person, and his soul membrane was naturally extremely powerful. During the ranking battle, he could have ignored Marquis Sword Snow's soul attack, but he didn't want to expose himself too much. After all, his soul power was not inferior to Life and Death Kings in terms of quality. Chapter 884. No matter what, he is an enemy, not a friend. How can I escape? The Mantis Beast King, who had been transformed into a hetero-blood demon king by the chaotic will and blood chi, had already rendered Yichen helpless. Now, there was also a human king, who looked several times stronger than the Mantis Beast King, which was truly a deadly situation. There was no way to escape, and there was no way to fight. Of course, if Yichen asked for the image of Yuan Emperor, this problem could be solved. However, Yichen did not intend to do so. If he asked for the image of Yuan Emperor every time he encountered danger, it would not serve as a tempering exercise. The image of Yuan Emperor could help him for a while, but not forever. If one wanted to pursue the limits of strength, one could only rely on oneself. One could not place one's hopes on others. In this situation, I have to fight with my own strength. Who knows, I might be able to make a breakthrough. In the worst case, I will ask for the image of Yuan Emperor at the moment of certain death. Yichen's actions were very dangerous. Perhaps he would be killed before he could ask for the image of Yuan Emperor. However, in order to reach the peak, he had to get used to this kind of life and death situation. On top of the mountain, fine. This spiritual projection of mine has 1/3 of the battle strength of the main body. Killing a low-step king-level brat will not be too difficult. The figure was wearing a mask, and his appearance could not be seen clearly. He stepped down from the peak and instantly arrived at the foot of the mountain. The Mantis Beast King was originally preparing to continue attacking Yi Chen. However, as soon as the masked man appeared, his target changed. To him, the masked man's aura was much more powerful, which made him feel very disgusted. The thin wings on his back vibrated, and his figure shot out, drawing a silk-like trace in the void as he appeared in front of the masked man in a flash. Pitiful. You have lost your basic intelligence. What do you have left? The masked man shook his head and pressed his palm toward the Mantis Beast King. Bang! Dazzling thunder and fire splashed. The Mantis Beast King had come quickly and left even faster. His two scythe-like limbs were broken inch by inch, and a large part of his chest had caved in, charred and smoking. What a tyrannical profound martial skill. Thunder Profound and Fire Profound are both above 90%. I'm afraid they are close to the greater success stage. Yi Chen's pupils shrank. All along, he had been suppressing his opponents with his profound martial skills. However, this time, his opponent was 10 times stronger than him in terms of profound martial skills. The masked man leisurely flew over, sized up Yi Chen, and said, "What a pity, a peerless genius is going to fall in my hands." "For you." Yi Chen had already recovered from his injuries and asked calmly. "You will never be able to guess my identity. Besides, you don't need to know. The dead have no right to know the truth." The masked man attacked as soon as he said he would. With a palm strike, thunder and fire splashed everywhere. This move again. Yi Chen's pupils shrank to 2 dots. His left hand held the evil vanquishing sword in front of his chest, while his right hand held the Sky Scorpio sword, slashing out diagonally. At the same time, the 2 great sword souls in his sea of soul shook violently, setting off waves of sword intense storms. The Destruction and Immortal sword intense clashed, causing the sword intense to vibrate. After the vibrations, the Destruction sword intent attached to the Sky Scorpio sword, while the Immortal sword intent fused with the evil vanquishing sword. The Destruction sword intent was the main attack. The Immortal sword intent was the main defense. At this moment, Yi Chen was using the 2 great sword intents against an enemy for the first time. Bang! Yi Chen's sword move was congealing water. However, upon colliding with the thunder and fire, the sword energy was immediately incinerated into nothingness. The terrifying thunder and fire energy bombarded the evil vanquishing sword like a hot knife through butter, sending out a large amount of electric snakes and sparks. In almost an instant, Yi Chen's 5 viscera and 6 bowels were damaged. His ribs were all broken, and his arms exploded inch by inch, turning into ashes. In the next moment, blood flowed out of his 7 orifices as he was sent flying. Losing control of the Sky Scorpio sword and the evil vanquishing sword, he was about to fall to the ground. Too strong. This is a mid-step king? Yi Chen had used all his means, but he was still crushed in the end. A supreme grade sword, not bad. Noticing the Sky Scorpio sword, the masked man reached out to grab it. "Come back." With a move of his soul power, the Sky Scorpio sword and the evil vanquishing sword turned into 2 streaks of light, chasing after Yi Chen. Grabbing nothing, a cold light flickered in the masked man's eyes. While flying back, Yi Chen was already operating his immortal body to recover his lost arms and damaged viscera. His injuries this time were too severe. Last time, when he was hit by the Poison Fire King's poison flame explosion, his arms and legs were incinerated into nothingness, and his viscera were injured. But this time, he had used up 40% of his Jin Yuan, and this was even with the congealing water sword energy counteracting a portion of the power. If he had only defended, he would have already fallen. To be able to receive one of my moves without dying is simply a miracle. You've truly surprised me. The masked man was indeed very surprised. Mantis Beast King was stronger than Yi Chen, but now he was already crippled. Yet the slightly weaker Yi Chen had actually survived. How could he not be surprised? However, you're still going to die. If 1 move isn't enough, how about 2 moves? The masked man took a step forward and pressed out a second palm, sending out thunder and fire. Destruction sword intent, break through for me. With only 60% of his Zhen Yuan left in his body, He could still recover through his immortal body the second time he was hit. But what about the third time? If he was hit for the third time, the remaining 20% of his Jin Yuan would not be enough to heal his wounds. Most importantly, even if he had trained the poison melting art to the minor completion level, the mutated star fire poison still required Jin Yuan to suppress. 20% of his Jin Yuan was the bottom line. Once his Jin Yuan was less than 20%, the masked man would not even need to do anything, as the mutated star fire poison would burn him into ashes. In the Soul Sea, the Destruction Sword Spirit and Immortal Sword Spirit resonated with each other. The Destruction Sword Spirit and Immortal Sword Spirit bloomed at the same time, illuminating more than half of the Soul Sea. Just as the thunder and fire energy was about to approach, the Destruction Sword Spirit suddenly shook and shone brightly. The Black Sword Spirit body seemed to have been sharpened, turning into a peerless sword. An incomparable sword intent burst out from the Destruction Sword Spirit, transmitted to the Sky Scorpio Sword, and then combined with the congealing water sword to attack the thunder and fire energy. The sixth step Destruction Sword intent attacked with full power. The thunder and fire energy collided with the congealing water sword spirit, erupting with astonishing energy fluctuations. The surrounding mountains were annihilated into nothingness by this energy fluctuation. What? Impossible? The masked man was stunned. This sword intent actually made him feel fear. It's the sixth step Destruction Sword intent. He raised the Destruction Sword intent to the sixth step. The masked man muttered. Every step of the sword intent would increase its power by several times. The higher the sword intent's rank, the greater the gap between two ranks. The difference between the fifth and sixth step was more than 5 times, and the difference between the sixth and seventh step was more than 10 times. Yichen possessed the Destruction Sword intent. Raising it from the fifth step to the sixth step was equivalent to raising an ordinary sword intent from the sixth step to the seventh step. Chapter 885. I've finally broken through. Yi Chen's face flickered with joy. Raising his Destruction Sword spirit from the peak of the fifth step to the sixth step wasn't hard for him. All he lacked was time. He didn't think that he would be able to save some time in this life and death situation. Chop! After canceling out the masked man's ultimate attack, Yi Chen took a deep breath. The Destruction Sword spirit in his sea of soul vibrated, and a peerless sword intent burst out, slashing down along his body. Vaguely, Yi Chen seemed to hear the scream of the star fire poison. The scream became weaker and weaker, and eventually stopped. After killing the star fire poison, Yi Chen felt a lot more relaxed. He lifted up his right index finger, and a small opening appeared on his fingertip. In the next second, the purple-red poison poured out of the opening, corroding the ground and leaving behind countless small burnt holes. There was even a burning flame shooting out of the holes. You've been poisoned by the star fire poison. The masked man recovered and noticed this scene. Killing the poison with the sixth step Destruction Sword intent. Seems like you know quite a bit. Same to you. Withdrawing his joy, Yi Chen's expression became calm. Although his Destruction Sword spirit had reached the sixth step and its power had increased by 10 times, he still didn't have the confidence to defeat the masked man. It should be known that the masked man's Jin Yuan was even purer than Poison Fire King's, and his profound martial skill had reached the upper high rank, a level higher than Yi Chen's congealing water. If not for the supreme grade Sky Scorpio sword, even if his Destruction Sword spirit had reached the sixth step, he still wouldn't be his opponent. Kid, you're quite modest, but you still have to die. The masked man's speed was extremely fast. Both of his hands were like phantoms of lightning, slapping palm after palm at Yi Chen. With each palm, thunder and fire would splash out. These thunder and fire were extremely dense, like heavy water. From this, one could see how high the masked man's attainments in the thunder and fire profounds were. The power of thunder and fire had been condensed to the extreme. Profound martial skills and Jin Yuan might not be comparable, but Yi Chen had the Sky Scorpio sword and the Destruction Sword intent. With the bewitching purple longsword in his hand, Yi Chen didn't back off, facing the masked man head-on. Clang, clang, clang. Thunder, fire, and sword chi splattered in all directions. Wherever the two of them went, everything within a radius of several tens of miles was razed to the ground. This was still within the bloodlight ocean. If it was outside, even 1,000 miles away would be affected. Thunder, fire, triple heavens. The masked man shouted loudly and struck out with his palm. His arm shook 3 times. Not good, it's a stacked attack. Yichen didn't expect the masked man to have such terrifying techniques, even though he was only a mid-stage king. How could he know that the masked man was just a consciousness projection? Although his battle prowess was at the level of an ordinary mid-step king, the battle prowess he displayed surpassed mid-step kings of the same level. Soul light. The silver vertical eye between Yi Chen's eyebrows opened, and a beam of silver light shot out, hitting the masked man's forehead. At the same time, Yi Chen raised his sword to block the attack and borrowed the momentum to retreat. Boom! Thunder, fire scattered everywhere, and a large amount of blood seeped out of the corner of Yi Chen's mouth. He had suffered a serious internal injury. Of course, the masked man wasn't in a good state either. He was just a consciousness projection, and his soul power was borrowed from the main body. Therefore, it wasn't very stable. After being hit by the soul light, the soul power stored in the core of his brain immediately leaked out, and his mental state became unstable. Damn it! The masked man was appalled. Yi Chen's soul light had dealt a huge blow to him. If he couldn't take care of Yi Chen in a short time, he wouldn't have another chance. His figure shot out, and the masked man unleashed another thunder, fire, triple heavens, which was incomparably frightening. Yi Chen continued to increase the distance between them. With a wave of the sky Scorpio sword, the masked man was sealed in a purple crystal mirror. His ultimate attack was affected, and 1 layer of power was destroyed, leaving only 2 layers. Moreover, the 2 layers weren't perfectly layered. Damn space profound. As a high-step king, the masked man naturally knew the terror and profoundness of space profound. Not only was space profound powerful, it was also second to none in terms of support. The mirror shattered, and numerous small wounds appeared on the masked man's body. What astonished Yi Chen was that there was no blood spurting out of these wounds. The opponent didn't seem to be a flesh life form. Consciousness projection. Blocking the imperfect thunder, fire, triple heavens, Yi Chen suddenly understood. Merely a consciousness projection has such battle strength. Then, wouldn't his main body be a high-step king? The gap between life and death kings was also huge. Ordinary life and death kings were called low-step kings, and accomplished kings were called mid-step kings. Behind them were high-step kings, peak kings, and titled monarchs. Yi Chen's current strength barely reached mid-step king. The masked man was a bit stronger than him, roughly a mid-step king. As for the masked man's main body, he should be a high-step king. No wonder his profound martial skills were so powerful. As his wounds healed, the masked man's aura weakened somewhat, but his killing intent became even more abundant. Thunder, fire, rain. Forming seals with both hands, the masked man roared. Rumble. The sky darkened, and countless thunderbolts struck down on Yi Chen. Scarlet flames poured down like a torrential rain, turning the surrounding dozens of li into a sea of flames. Inside the sea of flames, Yi Chen could feel his protective Zhenyuan being incessantly burned, and his Zhenyuan consumption increased. As a thunderbolt struck down, his protective Zhenyuan trembled, and its consumption increased even more. He's planning to exhaust my Zhenyuan so that I won't be able to make a comeback? Battling life and death kings, Yi Chen's greatest weakness was his lack of Zhenyuan. Lacking Zhenyuan meant that the number of times he could use the undying body was also limited. At this moment, he had less than 50% Zhenyuan remaining. If this continued, it would only continue to decrease, and he wouldn't even be able to use the undying body. At that time, he would truly be in danger. However, he's not feeling good either. He took a hit from my soul light, and his soul power should be on the verge of dissipating. Now, let's see who can persevere to the end. Knowing that the opponent was a consciousness projection, Yi Chen also knew his weakness. Extinguish! The sea of flames surged, and thunderbolts flew in all directions. Yi Chen tried his best to avoid the numerous thunderbolts. His figure shifted, and after another flicker, a second silver light beam shot out from between Yi Chen's brows. The masked man simply didn't have the time to dodge. The silver light beam was too fast. With a sway of his figure, the masked man's body turned slightly transparent, and a large amount of soul power leaked out, giving rise to a soul storm that could kill astral-reaching experts. Losing the control of his soul power, the consciousness projection also began to collapse. Zhen Yuan gushed out, diluting into the ordinary Yuan Qi of the world. Unfortunately, I can only use soul light twice. Yi Chen was confident that the third soul light would be able to extinguish the opponent's soul power. Add more fire. Unable to use soul light, Yi Chen held the Sky Scorpio sword and slashed out a meteor-like congealing water sword energy. If you can take this move, I'll spare your life today. The masked man roared, and his collapsing consciousness projection unexpectedly stopped collapsing. His soul power also stopped leaking out, condensing again. Shattering Yi Chen's congealing water sword energy with a palm strike, the masked man's figure faintly swayed. In the next moment, his entire body shot out toward Yi Chen, looking like he wanted to perish together with him. You want to perish together with me? No, even if he self-destructs, he won't be able to kill me. He probably still has some powerful killing moves. Yi Chen didn't dare to be careless. He pushed his sword domain to the limit, producing a sword pressure that froze the space. Anything that wanted to approach Yi Chen would have to use twice the power. Seal again. The bewitching mirror shattering sealed the masked man. However, the price was that his consciousness projection continued to collapse, and its speed became more and more exaggerated. His body became more and more illusory. Thunder, fire, four-layered sky. If it were his real body, the masked man could easily use thunder, fire, four-layered sky. However, the price of using his consciousness projection was mutual destruction. Therefore, he wouldn't use this move unless it was absolutely necessary. How frightening would the four-layered palm energies be? Yi Chen couldn't even imagine it. I can't be hit by this move. Otherwise, even if I don't die, I'll be crippled. Within the range of the sword domain, countless blue swords shot out. Above Yi Chen's head, the evil shattering sword and broken blood sword each separated into 33. Two sword snakes intertwined and shot out. Unfortunately, the masked man's palm was too powerful. All of the blue swords were destroyed, and the sword snakes were also shattered. The evil shattering sword and broken blood sword were blown away. The half-step extreme grade broken blood sword even had its tip broken, its radiance dimming. The masked man had already arrived in front of Yi Chen, pressing his palm over. Go all out. Circulating green lotus sword arts to the limit, a large amount of Zhen Yuan poured into the Sky Scorpio sword. Sky Scorpio sword was covered in a thick layer of purple crystals, which became thicker and thicker. Eventually, it looked like a purple crystal board, blocking in front of Yi Chen. The masked man's palm pressed on the surface of the Sky Scorpio sword, and the four-layered palm energy exploded. Purple light rain poured down from the sky. Yi Chen's feet rubbed the ground as he was blown back, shattering one mountain after another. Lightning flames scattered all over his body. He should be dead. The masked man's mouth curved into a smile. Then his illusory body suddenly dissipated, and the mask on his face shattered into thousands of pieces. Dozens of li away, inside a scorched mountain, Yi Chen was lying inside, his life or death unknown. After a while, rocks started to roll. Yi Chen raised an arm and supported himself on the ground, climbing up with difficulty. Blood flowed uncontrollably from the corner of his mouth, as if it was free. So dangerous. If I hadn't consumed so much Zhen Yuan to activate the crystal power of the Sky Scorpio sword, that palm could have taken my life. The crystal power of the Sky Scorpio sword came from the purple crystal iron. Normally, Yi Chen would only use the Sky Scorpio sword normally. But just now, it was too dangerous, so he had no choice but to use the power of the purple crystal iron. The price was that the crystal power of the Sky Scorpio sword had weakened. Recover. As his Zhen Yuan flowed like water, Yi Chen's injuries rapidly recovered. However, due to his heavy injuries, Yichen's Zhenyuan was left with less than 5%, almost bottoming out. I can't stay here for long. I need to find a place to recover my Zhenyuan. The battle had caused too big of a commotion, so Yichen didn't dare to stay here. Swish. With a flicker, Yichen dashed out of the mountain, randomly choosing a direction. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.